name is Thomas Friedhoff. I'll be your host for today. With me is a very interesting speaker, Joanna Pichetti, if I pronounce it correctly. She is
Yeah.
a futurist politician, if I say correct. So not a future politician. Maybe she will be. I'll let her talk a bit about that. And she is a global shaper, if I'm correct, and an activist. She's currently coming from London. We're broadcasting from Utrecht for the Dutch part of the campus party. And without further ado, I would like to give the stage to Joanna and have her properly introduce herself because she can probably do a much better job.
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here. Yes, thank you, Thomas. I am Joanna from Argentina. I am congresswoman in my country. I am a futurist politician. And well, I am here to have a conversation with you and with the audience.
So perhaps you can share with the audience a bit what your role is as a congresswoman, what your main topics are, what brings you currently to London, for example, and what you see as the main issues facing the world right now, and how we can learn the lessons from COVID-19,
Yes.
for example, to tackle issues like climate change, healthcare, stuff like that. So please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes. I am from Argentina. I am congresswoman in my country. I have a suffer story related with my politic career because I was elected in 2017, but the government and the power system pushed me away. They decided to create a court case to prevent me to exercise my power position. It was very hard for me to to live in this situation because I am woman, I am young. I decided to change my career from the private sector to the public sector to serve the people. And when I appear in the public sector, suddenly I am a little bit rebel. The old-fashioned politicians don't like when you are rebel, when you question the rules, when you are working to create a new future, and they use the violence, torture me. They use my children to prevent me to exercise the power position. And because of this, I decided to be an activist and a global shaper and raise my voice and decided to raise my voice in all the entire world because this is not only my story, it's the story of all the people, even young people, men, women, especially because for us as a women, it's so hard to take position of power in the public sector. And well, they in the government in my country damaged my reputation. I couldn't get other job. I am a woman. I am a worker. I born in a worker family, so it's not easy for me to live without income. But they destroy my reputation. They use a lot of violence. But well, this suffers. It makes me very strong, and I am here to speak up, to raise my voice, to save the world, and to create a new future. The main topics that I would like to speak is about the Universal Constitution because I am working as an activist. I am part of different communities: Extinction Rebellion, Sunrise Movement, Greenpeace, 350.org, New Economics Foundation, the Sunrise Project, a lot of communities, Burning Man, and I am working to unify all the movements to lead a mass mobilization in all the entire world. The main aim is to create a universal constitution, to put in the table of the power the new social contract, but not from politicians, but from the common people. We, the people, have to take the power to create the future that we want to create. So because of this, I was working with these movements, a lot of communities, and I am ready to activate and to take the streets and to speak up because we need a one word. We need um, a new way of government in all the entire world. And I am working in this with different people from different continents. And in my opinion, to create a new universal constitution, we have to develop people assemblies in local level, in national level, in continental level, and worldwide. And to create a universal constitution from the people assemblies, we can find a different leader from the civil society to create a constituent assembly to develop together a new universal constitution. And I am working on that. I am so sad with the coronavirus, the government, the politician, the private sector are not taking the things well, because the government spends money all the time, or borrowing money to solve the problems with the coronavirus. And the problem is not the coronavirus. The problem is the toxic system where we are living right now. The problem is the violence. The problem is, the George Floyd movement. I am sad when I listen the news, because we are missing something important. The discrimination is not only for the Black people; it's also for religion, immigrants, women, children, LGBT communities. The problem is the toxic system and the violence that we are living right now. And in my opinion, we need to change the way to create a one world with love and compassion, to feel that we, all of us, are one, and to change the rivalrous competition to collaboration and to serve with compassion. This is the main objective that we need to to work all together as a common people, because if not, imagine that I am futurist. I am working with exponential technology. I am working to create a startup related with the artificial intelligence and the exponential technology. If we live in this violent system, imagine the wars in the future. We need to change this. We need a new government, and we need to create value together, to think in our emotions, in our value as human beings, to serve, to help each other, to collaborate. This is my dream, and I am working to serve in this way, because we cannot wait for some other people to fix this. We need to act now. All the people, we need all the people speaking up, exercising our power. And also with the exponential technology, it's easy for us to exercise our power. We need referendums. We need the government of the entire world need our opinion, our decisions, not the politician decisions creating a economic policy. Come on, we need to speak up to create the future that we want to create as a people. And I am here working on that, to ready to activate. I don't know, what do you think, Thomas, but I would like to hear you.
I was listening passionately to your passionate speech. So, what a couple questions pop into my mind. I would be curious. I said you've been forced to leave your country, unfortunately, if I understand correctly, and you're now based in London. But I'm assuming you're still fighting for the interests of your constituents in Argentina, and perhaps trying to. There's a lot of companies and people and knowledge in the UK, but also in Europe, that can help, for example, tackle climate change. Because I think Argentina, I'm not aware of the specific situation in Argentina, but I can imagine that it will be quite hot there, and it already is. And with climate change, that will only be accelerated. You just have to look, for example, at Australia or the California bushfires. what would you encourage people, for example, in Europe, in the Netherlands, where I am, in the UK, but also in Argentina and all around the world? What practical steps can they take? For example, we had in the Netherlands, we had the Climate Youth last year, which marched with 15,000 young people who got a meeting several times with the Dutch Prime Minister and the Minister of Economics and Climate Change. But that sort of faded away now. And it's, of course, now more difficult to get out on the street with COVID. So what would be your advice to them? Can they cleverly organize to still make sure that their voices are heard and that the right policies, for example, the Green New Deal, are implemented?
Yes, totally agree. Yes, it's so hard because we cannot take the street right now, but through the technology, it was amazing for me because the coronavirus gave me hope because I can connect with all the people from different parts of the world, different continents, different regions, different culture, and it's amazing to have this opportunity. We have to see this crisis as an opportunity to change the world. My suggestion is, okay, we cannot take the street right now, but we can work with 2 people, 3 people in our home, in our neighbor, in our community. If, for example, I am working in Extinction Rebellion in my country and also in Latin America, and right now moved to London, and I am working in different communities from Germany, United States, and it's easy because we can connect through the technology and we can organize. I am working also to develop people assemblies through Zoom calls. We use Zoom calls to listen the voices of the common people because we can create a universal constitution from the voices of all the people. The people have to take courage to speak up, to involve in politics, to use the social media to raise their voices, because if not, the governments through the media influence our behaviors, even to consume this product. Or it's we need to elevate our consciousness, and the way to do this is to create people assemblies. It's not necessary to create physically. We can use this time to create the people assemblies by Zoom calls or whatever you want to the tool, whatever you want to use. And in my opinion, this is a time to prepare, to organize, and when finish the coronavirus, we are ready to take the street and to exercise our power as a common people. We, as a civil society, as a common people, have to have our seat in the power table. The private sector, the politicians, and the civil society working together with love and compassion. We need to change the way of the government of the worldwide. We need to change the way of the business. We need to create business with love, not with competition. If you think in every industry, one company compete with another, and this is not the way. The way is to collaborate, to work together, and even between different stakeholders. We are here together to create a new world, and this is my suggestion, to involve in conversation. You don't have to be shy. You have to speak up and exercise your power with your thoughts, with your dreams, with you following your dreams and working together. This is my advice. I am doing this.
What I like is, I'm not sure if it's the Latin American passion or it's just your character, but I am quite
Yes.
passionate about this. But no, I think it's very good because a lot of people, due to COVID, are also depressed or are like, how do we solve this, etc. And you look at it from a positive side and try to look at the opportunities. And that's what I saw some people like, when do we go marching, etc. And my advice would be, there is an EU summit this week, for example, talking about the Green New Deal. So make sure you call your MP, call your state official, email them, make sure your voices are heard, and also say, we don't want to be on the streets with 15,000 or 40,000 people. We want you to enact the right policies. That's where we elected you for, which is probably the same why your constituents chose you, or for example, why you, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the most famous young politicians globally. And if you also look at, for example, how the corona crisis has been handled, even as a guy, I have to admit it, that it was often female leadership,
Yes.
which I'm a big proponent of. Is, for example, if you look at Jacinda Ardern, which is ironically
Yes, I love.
she was installed as prime minister on the same day as the Dutch prime minister Mark Rutte took his third term in office. And I'm not saying that Mark Rutte, he's a good crisis manager, and you have to applaud him for constantly building coalitions. But what I also hear from a lot of entrepreneurs and from startups, but also from a lot of young people, said he's from the more liberal and the right wing, economic right wing party, and they said we want a bold vision on this, and we want not a 1-year plan, we want a 10-year plan, we want a 20-year plan, and we want sustainable investments. You also see investors moving in that direction. For example, I think you mentioned you were a global shaper prior to the World Economic Forum. You saw serious investors like BlackRock, who are mostly in it for the money, which is okay. That they said we're going to be shifting a lot of capital towards sustainable investments, and they're going to be saying to fossil fuel investments, we're not going to finance you anymore. It will be interesting to see if they live up to their promise, and they should. And for example, even Shell, BP, they've had massive write-offs in the 15 to 20 billion euro or dollars area, and have to make a lot of layoffs. And that's sad for those people, but actually we'll need a lot of technical people to build windmills, solar panels, electric cars, autonomous cars, to make sure we move to that sustainable future. And I think we've had a unique insight into what a more sustainable world can look like, because I heard a lot of people in the Netherlands, and I'm sure this is a global phenomenon, say, hey, the air is cleaner. Hey, I have more time for my family. Hey, there was a chair of a Dutch employers organization in Brabant, Erik van Schagen, from VNO-NCW, who gave an interview, and he said, I just realized through all this video calling, I don't have to visit one of his offices. He has a pretty large SME, if you still can call it the SME. I can do that by video call, and that's more effective than constantly flying there every couple of weeks. And I might have to do one in-person visit per year, and he probably realized now he can do that by electric car or by international train. They've saved 70,000 euros in April alone on less fuel expenditure, and the interview suggests that they still mainly have fossil fuel cars. Imagine if those are all electric, and imagine if they're shared. For example, what you see a lot of employers in the Netherlands do as well, that you have electric car sharing hubs, so your operational costs are much lower, your carbon footprint is much lower. Employees often find it fun. There's also a lot of software in it, so I know software companies that use it as an innovation strategy. And for example, in France, I was in a electric mobility and smart mobility conference last week, and you had again a good female leader, Anouk Exequier, correctly, who is the head of mobility and project manager for La Défense, a big quarter in Paris. And they redesigned the streets, as they've done in Milan, and I believe also in London and New York. And some of it is temporary, and I hope most of them will be permanent. And for example, they put up containers with mobile bike repair shops, and the French government gave, or the Paris government, I'm not sure, gave 50 euros to citizens to repair their bikes, to incentivize them to bike more. And now a lot of people do it. That's like, hey, why was I always in traffic jams, inhaling toxic fumes, spending 1 or 2 hours in traffic, shouting at fellow car drivers, why am I in traffic? You're delaying my meeting, or I'm coming late for a family visit. So I think, as you rightfully pointed out, this is a great reset, if you will. And I think also, yes, we should change politics, but you also see there was a survey by Duurzaam Bedrijfsleven, .nl, which stands for Sustainable Companies, roughly translated. And they did a survey that found that a quarter of their respondents said that the employees had bigger climate ambitions than their employer. So I don't know who those 25% are, but that's quite significant. And I would encourage all of them and all the companies you speak to or make work with, and all the people around the world watching or who might rewatch this talk later, talk to the CEO, but also talk to the product managers, to the innovation
Yes.
department, to the sustainability department, and say, hey, we want to go faster. What can we do? And you see that a lot of companies are now also rethinking supply chains, because do you really want to ship something from 6,000 kilometers? And you can see now how easily that can be disrupted, where it makes much more sense to source as much as possible locally. For example, we in the Netherlands, we have still some high quality solar production. It's just relatively unknown. Apparently, our German neighbors have solar panels which can last up to 50 years. Our class panels, they have 30 years product guarantee and yield, but they will be slightly more expensive unless we find clever ways of saying, but hey, there is a value to making sure that it's delivered on time, that it's locally sourced, that there is less transport, which also saves carbon. And I think carbon pricing and a Green New Deal or carbon border tax, which has been discussed and I think proposed by Spain just prior to COVID,
Yes.
could play an important role in it. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about that as well.
Wow, wow, totally agree. So many stuff, Thomas. Yes, yes. Well, first of all, yes, I am very passionate to see leaders, female leaders with their feminine, because in the past, the women who achieved the power position, it was because they are similar to men. But now we need the feminine in woman, the love, the compassion, the care, they take care for people. Yes, totally agree. Yes, we need to create a Green New Deal. I was studying about the last New Deal in the Depression, because in my opinion, this time is a parallel of the Depression time. And if you study the Depression in the 30s, in 20s and 30s, the New Deal was created to change the economic, political, and social system. But they forget the nature, the biosphere, the ecological. And we need to use this time to create something like this New Deal, but put in the first point the ecological, the health, the emotional health, not only the physical. Because if you remember, when the World War II finished, we in the past changed the health system, and we decided at that moment to use well, these people is ill, okay, but the community, where what is their work, what is where they live. And right now, it's not only we are changing the health system in the same way, but to add not only where the people live, the community, the neighbor, the work, but also the story of the people, the family of the people, the emotions, the all the psychological behaviors, because this is important right now to add in the new health system. And I am totally agree with you, because with exponential technology, we are living under uncertainty every time, and we don't know how is the way, because the model is not exist. We have to develop the model to create a new social contract, but we need to involve to in this conversation, to learn from each other, to share experience. And yes, I was part of the Growth Vienna event, and it's called my attention, because all the global, I don't like to separate in binary things, global south, global north, orient, east, I don't like to separate in binary things. I prefer to see the world as one, we as one. We have to change the word I individually for we the people. But when I was in this event, they were talking about the growth in all the north. But imagine you, I am from the south of the globe, I am Latina, I am from Argentina, and we cannot be grow because in our country the necessities are very important. There are people with a lot of necessities, and we need the help of the North to empower the global south to live in a justice war, an equal war, and in a war with all of us have the same rights, the human rights, in a world where we can develop our civil rights, exercise our power, put the human rights and the people first. And yes, I am very committed to serve in this way. Yes, I am feeling that the exponential technologies help us to take part in this conversation. This is the way.
And you say take part of this conversation. Well, we just made a case for more female leadership.
Yes.
I think we have the first Commission president being a woman, Ursula von der Leyen.
Yeah.
So suppose she has this EU summit tomorrow, and she's like, "There's so many guys. I need a bit more. I need a bit more female leadership." Frans Timmermans and Dirk Samson, they're doing great work on the Green New Deal, but he said, "We need Joanna." So Ursula calls you up. What would be your advice to her, or what will you do to, for example, change the setting in the room to make sure all the, not just all the guys, but all the ministers, all the people in power, to actually feel the need to act boldly on climate change and other societal issues which you talked about? What would you be your signature proposal, or what if Ursula calls in sick tomorrow and says, "Joanna, please, can you chair this meeting for me?" How would you go about it?
Yes, big opportunity. Yes, I embrace all the opportunities. I have a lot of ideas to serve, and I am thinking to create a constituent assembly from different leaders from different continents and nations to put the different views in the conversation, because my advice is I am working very hard to empower girls and young women, because I know that it's so hard for girls and for women. Imagine in South Africa, in Latin America, we need to provide them the tools to, like entrepreneurship tools, or to develop their shops, to live in freedom. And yes, my signature is to empower girls and children and young women around the world, to create bases with technology, because I was working in a lot of communities, and every time we have problems with the connections. And I am sad because in South Africa, in Latin America, in South Asia, in India even, all the time the connection doesn't work, the internet connection. And I am sad because this is the only way to connect with people, and we need this connection even in this time, because we need to take care for each other. And when the internet connection is not a human right for people, the people cannot be connected, and connected is another key to create a one world together. This is my signature: to empower girls, young women, to develop and to assist with fundraising, to develop technology bases in different parts of the world where people don't have access to internet connections. And yes, to take the conversation to create a new social contract together, listen every voices from every region for all the entire world.
I think this is a very important plea, because it's also independent research shows, for example, by they also have a book about 100 climate solutions. I'm trying to think of the name. Project Drawdown, that in the top 3 or top 5 most effective climate policies is actually empowering women, because if you also see, you talk about entrepreneurship, you see that happening in Africa. When women become entrepreneurs, they're often more clever with money than men. They're slightly more risk averse, but that means that also if you look at professional hedge fund managers, for example, I think in the long run, women provide a better return because they don't at a certain point think like, okay, let's make this very bold bet and then gamble away a lot of the money. But you also see that education there is a very important part, entrepreneurship, and that if you empower the girls and the women and the mothers, then entire families progress, both societally, that their basic needs are met better, but that they often provide very well for their communities as well, that they stimulate other women to set up a small company or share skills. And for example, I'm a big fan of Waka Waka. You might have heard about them. A solar light. It's a Dutch innovation, but they have a philosophy that is a buy one, give one. So every time you buy one is supplied at cost to areas of crisis. So also if there's a flooding or an earthquake, but also to enable children, young girls, but also young boys, of course, and families to be able, very simply, it gets dark at 5 or 6 p.m. and that they can study at night, that they have proper light to read with, powered by the sun during the day, and it goes up to 80 hours on the solar light. Which means they can study at night, so they can educate themselves, so they can progress, and also for safety, because often they use petrol-fueled kerosene lamps, which often, sadly, also start fires and have houses burned down, and sadly also is not often without loss of life. And it also helps them to power up their phone because it's multifaceted. Which, especially in areas like that, is we think we're very well ahead with mobile banking in Europe and the US, but a lot of the technology was developed in, for example, South Africa and other African countries, very basic, but that also very foolproof in that case, because we might overcomplicate things, and that a lot of people can do online banking through texting, for example, microcredits, to make sure they progress. So I think
even the UBI, the Dognac Economics. I am working in different things, but yes, we need to change the mindset of the people, educate the people. The people have to study their constitution, their rights, because if you don't know your rights, you cannot stand for your rights. So yes, I am very committed with this, and yes, my assignment could be this. Yes.
And perhaps in final question, because I think we can continue this conversation for a long time, and maybe we should another time. But all jokes aside, but we mentioned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I can imagine is a role model or peer for you.
Yes.
So, and she's very active on social media, so maybe you should send her this talk, and who knows, she replies.
Yes.
And so you're a congresswoman as well. Suppose you're on her team, helping her to achieve the Green New Deal in the US. What would be your number one policy proposal or thing you would organize with her to make sure it's implemented?
Wow, great idea, Thomas. Thank you so much. Yes, of course. Yes, I love to work with her, and with a lot of people that are changing the world right now. Yes, thank you, because this is a great idea. I will do it.
But she's also a very good campaigner. For example, if you would be her campaign manager now, how would you make sure that people in the US are enthusiastic about the Green New Deal? Because there's also, we should realize, due to COVID and the mismanagement of the crisis, let's be honest, there's 40 million people out of a job, and a lot of people in the US live paycheck to paycheck. So not for everybody, climate solutions might be top of mind, but we already knew that to solve the climate change crisis, a lot of jobs would be needed and created. And that's also why it's called the Green New Deal, because it's similar to the effect the original New Deal from, if I'm correct, Frank Roosevelt had.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Alexander Ocasio-Cortez calls you and says, Joanna, we're going to do this. We have a couple of months to get this started. How would you campaign on this, and how would you make sure it's actually implemented at the policy level?
Yes, well, first of all, put Latin in the first place, because uh, since 5 years ago, I decided to read a book of Kissinger, The New World Order. And when I was reading this book, because I love the politics, and I discovered that this is the way to change the world, to change the humankind, and to put the people first. Uh, I was very upset because Latin America is not appear in this book. And I realized that Latin America is not appear in this book because the states think that Latin America belongs to them. And first of all, I would like to work with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because she is Latin like me. We need to put Latin American people in the table power, because we have a lot of experience to serve and to create a new work together. And even I am thinking, because I am working to create something like a school of politics to educate young people to take power, because we need young people, women and men in politics since a very early age. And yes, if I have the opportunity to work with her, yes, we can create together a school to empower young people to take power in politic ways. Yes, we need leaders in the entire world, from different ages, 20s, 30s, 40s, women, men, because the young people suffer at the same like women, because the old-fashioned system is very hierarchy, and right now we need to decentralize the power. We don't like the hierarchies. The people, the 40 and under, we don't like the hierarchies. Every power is atomic, and this is the way to create value together and to work in circles, in cells, in circles, and this is the way. Yes, yes, eager to work with her, please. And Jacinda Arden, and
Well,
yes.
as said before we wrap up, I think you should. The good thing is this video will be on YouTube, so it will, or it already is. So maybe copy the link and send it into an email to her, and mention that we referenced her and that you would like to work with her and that you're a congresswoman. I like your idea about the politics school for young people, because, for example, you see with
Yes.
the climate youth that they learned a lot on the go last year. And you
Yes.
see that I also noticed that there's a lot of young people, at least in the Netherlands, that are open to it, but they don't know how. And the same goes for
Exactly.
entrepreneurship. So I think there's a need for both. You see that there's a lot of, for example, there were also initiatives during the crisis to develop COVID solutions, but also you saw that a lot of social and impact startups were created to tackle several societal issues, but a lot of them also focus on the climate crisis. And as some say, this is a bump, and the climate crisis will be a wave. And I think Luca de Grassi and Formula E driver, and Alejandro Agaz, the CEO of Formula E, also mentioned this on the global stage today in talking about the Green New Deal and the reset. So you might want to rewatch that as well. And everybody who's listening or rewatching this YouTube later.
Yes.
And I think without further ado, we shouldn't steal any more of your time, but we can, of course, connect offline and continue this conversation. And I would encourage anyone who feels the same way that to connect with you, and if they want, also with me. And to organize yourself and use also, there's also an opportunity. A lot of people will be holidaying in their own country this summer. There's not many big sports events. Lots have been postponed or canceled. So there's yes, take a short break, but there's also a lot of opportunities to organize and to strategize
Yes.
and to cleverly plan for a people-driven campaign, if you will, to push for those policy proposals. Again, push your MPs, let them know, give them good solutions they can implement, and pressure also the European Union and other relevant institutions to implement that Green New Deal. On that note, Joanna, I would really like to thank you for your time, and everybody who's watching or rewatching this later, for joining in for this. As said, it will be on our YouTube channel from Campus Party NL, and I think also on the global website. There will be several other sessions on Green Deal later today. For example, on 2:30 we have Stefan Kloosterboer, who has a scale-up with a clever AI technology, how to regulate heating. And to just give you a couple of numbers, they calculated that for big buildings, this is just the Netherlands, above 800 square meters, so schools, hospitals, theaters, but also office buildings. We're currently in CCME. This is already 2,500 square meters alone, that they can save thousands of euros per building, but also a lot of gas and carbon emissions. And total for the Netherlands, when there's few or no people in the building, this already compiles to 250 million cubic meters of gas. And this is not during regular operation. This is on the Saturdays and the Sundays when there's almost nobody in the building, or nobody in the building. 150 million euros in potential savings. So there's your business case. And equally important, or in my case, most important, 450,000 tons of CO2 that can be saved. So Prime Minister Rutte, if you're listening, Minister Wiebes, this is part of your solutions. This is already part of a coal plant that you need to close down anyway, but this way will help you get there quicker. And I think this goes for a lot of countries as well. So look up clever solutions as well. I discovered 20 new startups just preparing for this conference. So I think we also need to make sure our startup ecosystems, which Prince Constantijn talked about on the global main stage yesterday, we need to make sure that they're better connected, both on the regional and national level, but also on the international level. And on that note, I wish you a very sunny and bright Friday afternoon. Clever ideas, plan ahead, and I'm sure we'll be in touch later.
Yes. Let me just say something very quicker. I am working with SDG goals. I am working with COP26 to lead a space in the power table with the people as a civil society, with the United Nations, SDGs, and COP26. And also let me to say this, I am working in World Future Society. You can Google World Future Society. It's an amazing community that are creating the future and the new kind of civilization, because we need to create the new future instead to fight against the old fashion. We need to focus in create a new one, and we need to create a new collective narrative together, and the collective narrative together we can create with our stories, all the stories of all the people from all the entire world. Is a way to share, to learn, to create a collective narrative, and to create a new future together. Thank you, Thomas.
I was just quickly looking up the website of World Future Society. If I'm correct, it's worldfuturesociety.org. Is that correct?
Yes, okay. Exactly. Yes.
Yes. And so I'll quickly put it up on the screen for anybody interested. Please check if I did this.
Yes. I am leading a team into this community related with the growth, and to give tools for the people to create a new future, a new humankind. Yes.
And on a final note, it's interesting, to the last climate meeting, the Conference of the Parties in Madrid, several Dutch MPs tried to get there by either international train. Sadly, the French were on strike that day, so that didn't materialize. And some of them looked into electric cars, but you noticed that they just looked at local initiatives where there was electric car sharing, and like, oh, I'm not sure if I make it. And then
Mhm.
they already said that to the biggest Dutch news broadcaster, the NOS. And then my WhatsApp exploded with all electric car drivers like, that's not an issue. Just go there and rent an electric car, or hey, you can borrow mine if you really need to. Um, but okay, so that didn't materialize. But I made the pact with several MPs, and I would like to invite you to that as well. That
Yes.
because the next conference of the parties will be in Glasgow, if I'm correct. That
Yes,
we already
exactly.
agreed we would make a race of technologies of it. So with several brands of electric cars, so they can try them all, and that we'll have a race, for example, starting in the Netherlands. But of course, this also applies to Belgian, France, German politicians, Italian, Spanish, whoever wants to. That we can
Yes.
set up hubs from the different countries driving up. And one of the MPs said, "Yeah, but I want to take the train." I said, "That's fine. You take the
Yes.
international train. That's like even better. Then we can do a comparison." And my plan would be to have stopovers at the charge points, meet with local and sustainable entrepreneurs, startup hubs, scientists, uh, local politicians, so that we all know about the local solutions and the
Yes.
national and the international solutions. And you notice that a lot of policymakers, for example, have not driven an electric car themselves ever. So they think, oh yeah, but
Exactly.
it's very difficult. And even car lobbyists, they say like, yeah, but I need 700-kilometer range. Well, the most long range electric cars currently have around 500-600-kilometer range, but it's in their mindset that they need 700
Yes.
kilometers straight away. But nobody drives 700 kilometers in one go. By that time, you will either have stopped for coffee because you want a coffee anyway. It's safer for driving, and at a certain point,
Yeah.
after 3 or 5 hours of driving, you're gonna want to have lunch. So even if your car could go 700 kilometers, and they probably will in the future, your body can't. So there is a natural
Yes.
incentive to stop. And I know, for example, a lot of drivers they actually say, "Oh, it's already filled up, and I don't have. I'm just halfway into my coffee." But on that note, thank you very much for your time. And
Yeah.
or if there's final words if you want to say, or you want to say goodbye to our audience.
Yeah, yes. Goodbye. You are the best. Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me. A pleasure to be in contact with you. And yes, ready to work together.
And how do you say goodbye properly in Argentinian?
Ay, muchas gracias a todos. Chao a todos.
Okay, I'll keep it at ciao, and you'll have to
Yes.
see you later. Okay, bye.
Chao, chao, chao. Bye, bye. Chao.